Hello, listeners, and welcome to another WrestleMagic branded episode here with your boy Rocky T, the Gardner Mark Gross, and friend of the show, Just Incredible. Mr. Gardner, how you going? How's the weather and what's growing?
Well, I've got hot peppers, I've got sweet peppers, I have lettuce, I have radishes, which are actually looking really decent. Not as good as my girlfriend's radishes, but that's not actually a code word. She actually grows radishes, guys. Um, I've got tomatoes, I've got cherry tomatoes, I have all kinds of things. I've got both, excuse me, I have both a community garden and I have buckets out back of my place. So I'm doing all kinds of gardening and I'm loving it and I'm really enjoying it. I have a giant serrano that I'm about to cut down and dice up and put in some salsa. But most salsa is made by the best Latinos, and I think that we know a Latino that's on the show today, and
Hmm.
that would be Mr. PJ Palaco.
What's going on, fellas? How is everybody?
Trying to stay
Good, bro.
dry in Houston, man. We've been having some bipolar weather. It's just raining for 20 minutes and then sunshine and then more rain and thunderstorms for literally the last 2 weeks. I've gone to the car wash 3 times and it literally rained on me that same afternoon. Every time. I
It's
can't.
it's been actually similar in the East Coast.
Yeah.
Very it's all over the place, you know. So yeah, I feel you on that one, man. But
Well, weather.
happy to be back here on the show, guys. So it's good to hear from you. Good to hear your voices.
Well, absolutely, bro. So, it's been schizophrenic weather down here. Today, everything was coated in pollen. We should be past pollen.
Mm,
Like my
yeah,
little silver car, Bob the Bullet. I named it after Bullet Bob Armstrong.
of course.
Coated in yellow pollen.
Oh
I
no.
mean, just it was crazy. But anyway,
Uh,
so PJ, you want to lead us off and talk about some stuff, and I think there's something you need to get off your chest.
Yeah, just really quick. I just wanted, the Mav is a good friend of the shows and a friend of ours, friend of mine. I was supposed to get some stuff out to him, which I did not. So I just wanted to let him know personally on air that I'd not forgotten. It was my fault. I completely botched the deal, which basically means I completely forgot about it. So I apologize, and I will make good on it. So Mav, there you go. I'm sorry about that. We'll make good.
All right. So today's topic is going to be lost storylines or storylines that went nowhere, and everybody's just kind of scratched their head and said, "What?" So I know you were part of one. So PJ, why don't you lead us off, buddy?
Well, I mean, there's so many great ones. I mean, you always in wrestling when you start something, you always think like, wow, this is going to be, it has the opportunity to be something really great. And but one I have, and not a lot of people know this. This just it kind of happened. Because of the nature of the business at the time and what was going on in the wrestling world, and this is about mid 2000s. I brought in, I was kind of a single-handed effort to bring Scott Hall to wrestle in ECW. It was kind of like Scott had just kind of been let go from WCW, or his contract was up, whatever. I know he'd been going through some personal stuff, but you know it was just a great time to say, hey, let's get you in here. ECW was still, even in 2000, even though we were going through financial difficulties, it was still a hot place. Like as far as the business went, like the actual storylines and attendance and stuff, that was doing well. Fan base was hot. So Scott came in and he worked with me. We had a one singles match in Poughkeepsie, New York, which has huge significance because that's the place where Vince McMahon, used to tape Monday Night Raw. And
Yes.
even Vince Senior used to tape WWE Superstars in Poughkeepsie in that building. That was the building where him and 1-2-3 Kid, where famously I think Kid missed a dive and he almost killed himself, knocked himself out. That was that building. There's just anyways. It was to me it was like just kind of like a bucket list thing, and Paulie loved it. Scott loved it. I don't think he understood what ECW was at the time, and the whole thing was to get him back to do an entire program with him and myself. Basically, like I was the bastard son of the clique, that I was never really, mentioned or appreciated, and that was kind of going to be the deal. Because realistically, I was more of Scott's friend than anybody else's, really. But but anyways, it was just I thought, and Paul thought it was a great opportunity to kind of just further that along, especially with Scott having such great, at that time, the NWO, even though it was a couple of years removed, was still one of the hottest things in the business. So he still had all that stuff, to bring to the table. So, I just wish we would have got a chance to do it, but unfortunately, a couple of months later, ECW was no longer. So even if everything would have aligned, I don't think we, time wise, we could have pulled it off the way the business went.
Well, my question for you at that time is, because Paul was in bed with Vince, so to speak, do you think that they would have brought anybody from WWE down to work with you to further the storyline if ECW stayed in contact and stayed financially stable?
See, I don't even know, man. I don't think I know for a fact that Vince only knew ECW as far as namesake. I know for a fact he did not understand the product. I don't think he ever really watched the product. I could guarantee you he didn't. It was just more of he knew ECW was a thing, and he basically got a very rudimentary education on ECW, probably a briefing prior to a meeting or something like that. This is what ECW is, pal, kind of a thing. But it never really got off the ground floor with Vince as far as what it could be, as far as an intellectual property, as far as what I mean. It was always Paul Heyman's vision, and I think Paul they kind of did that for a reason, to kind of like, he'll always have a spot in the game, so to speak, if he holds that card close to the vest.
Well, I think that was a brilliant move, but so I'm going to bring up something that I thought was like really, really funny, and it was one of the worst storylines of all time, and it had a finish, but it shouldn't have had a finish. It should have just gone away, and that was Mark Henry and Mae Young and the birth of the hand.
Yes.
Now this is you. Were you even in WWE at that point, or you?
I was not.
Okay.
Not. I saw that from a distance. Yes.
See, the thing is, it was a garbage storyline, and of course, you couldn't go anywhere with it. And nobody could believe that a woman that old is going to be impregnated. I don't care if he's sexual chocolate or not. You're not going to be impregnated. Okay, your body at some point shuts down. You go through menopause. We all know the rules. Okay, but the fact that they didn't wait another month or two, when Raw was going to be a day before or a day after April Fool's Day to reveal it. It makes no sense that they just didn't have the vision to say, okay, well, we can unveil it at this point and say it's a joke.
Yeah, botched it.
Yeah, instead they botched it. So that's one of my, because there was no point to that whole storyline. It was a punishment for Mark Henry for some reason. And there's about 6 or 7 people I would never punish. Mark Henry, Kane, Undertaker, Paul White. That's about it. Like, there's a lot of people who will squash you like a bug. And, all the stories that Undertaker talks about, like Mark Henry picking up the tour bus overseas and moving it on his back.
Yeah.
Yeah. So why would you punish that guy? I get the fact that he didn't go over the way they wanted him to, but they gave him a really bad skill set. They gave him a punch, slap, body kick, body slam. Like that's why he didn't get over. That's why he never, became what he was until the Hall of Pain. And still, it was. I don't want to say too little, too late, because I do have a lot of respect for Mark Henry, and I think that he is somewhat of a locker leader and a locker room leader, I should say. And I think that he has a lot to give back to the business. And I really feel that, like, he was just not approached in the right way. But that whole thing with the hand, that was just the dumbest thing I've ever seen in my life. It's close to Katie Vick, but it's not quite Katie Vick.
Can't talk about that.
Rock, why don't you take one?
Well, I'm gonna pivot a little way to a storyline, not necessarily one that we didn't have it finished to because, creative or somebody walked out or injury, but this one was actually due to a death. Tragedy struck, and that was a storyline from 1997. This was a storyline between Brian Pillman and Goldust. The storyline took place in 1997 and was one of the more controversial and dramatic angles of that era. The feud added a personal twist involving Terry Reynolds, who was the real life and on-screen valet of Goldust. The storyline kicked off with Brian Pillman making lewd comments and advances towards Marlena. Pillman claimed he'd had past relationships with her, and that's what started and added the personal animosity to the feud. They had a stipulation match at SummerSlam '97. They had a couple matches, but then before they could actually get the payoff to the storyline, tragedy struck and we lost Pillman. I didn't realize how big of a deal it was when Pillman showed up on WWE TV, because I didn't learn until years later that he was, going in between companies, showing up on ECW TV and WCW, and like that's a big deal. So for me, growing up and then learning about it later on, I realized how much we really lost out on that talent, and for both of these guys, that could have been a very good payoff. So were either one, you weren't there either yet in '97, PJ, were you?
No, I was not. I
Too
was
early,
not.
but you still knew the guys. So did you have anything to add to that?
I had actually only met Brian in passing. I didn't know
Oh,
him at all.
really?
I was a
Okay.
huge fan. I was a huge fan.
I don't know why I
Huge.
assume all wrestlers know all wrestlers. I just assume
Yeah,
that.
yeah. Oh, I unfortunately I was, but I'll tell you one thing. It's funny you say that. He was one of the reasons I loved the business, and he was like one of my favorites as a mark when I was a mark in high school. Like Brian Pillman when he first came into WCW in like 89, 90, 91. Like that's when I graduated high school, right before I went to wrestling camp. So I was a huge Brian Pillman fan. So yeah, I admired him so much. I wish I would have got to know him. You know.
So let me ask you something, PJ. Do you think that Justin Credible versus the loose cannon, Brian Pillman, you'd have to be the heel?
Oh
Would
yeah, of
sell out
course.
the ECW? Do you think you could sell out bigger than ECW arena?
Oh, of course. Jeez. I mean, we were. I mean, again, it all depends. I mean, it's all happenstance. But I remember, it's like anything else. When the business is hot, and it is hot right now, even though you could argue with AEW's numbers at the gate, it's very bad. But
Yes.
I mean, I just can. All I could say is when we were doing it as ECW, we were selling 3,000 tickets per event. I mean, and I'm not talking. I mean, I know that you can't compare to a WWE or a WCW at the time, but we were also running considerably smaller venues. You know what I
Yes.
mean? We weren't running 20,000 seat venues. We were literally running gymnasiums, which we probably got for $500 or $600 on rental, and selling 3,000 tickets and stuffing fans in, and which also made it look great on television. You know what I mean? So I think that was the kind of the charm of the whole thing. It made it feel underground. It felt real, and there was really something to that because it's easy to go to a house show for WWE or a TV taping for WWE, but ECW, it was something else to it, because it was almost like you're going to a production. It's like almost like as a fan, you're asked to do something. You're asked to kind of participate and partake in the madness, and that's what kind of made ECW so cool. So it kind of all goes hand in hand.
No, I get it. I just kind of curious because I believe that the two of you could have definitely sold
Oh,
something
we could
out.
have sold some tickets, man. Oh my God, that would have been a dream. I mean, I think for sure. But I mean, that's it. What I was trying to get at is in 2001, right before we closed up. No, I'll go back. June of 2000, we did Heat Wave, and it was myself and Tommy Dreamer. That was the show where the XPW guys showed up.
Yeah.
And I remember it was at the Grand Olympic Auditorium where back in the day, Pat Patterson, Ray Stevens used to sell out that for the territories back in the day. The Grand Olympic was like the Madison Square Garden of LA. Back in those days, it sat about 6,000. And I remember Dreamer and I were the main event in a ladder match, Stairway to Hell. We sold out those 6,000 seats. So I can only imagine what a guy like Pillman in the future, you know what I mean? If you could kind of put what wrestling has become, and you know what I mean. I don't know, man. It just sky's the limit. Sky would have been the limit for a lot of them. I mean, you could say that about RVD Van Dam or Van Dam against him as well. A lot of those guys. You could throw Sabu in there against. It would have been amazing.
I wanna sidebar real quick. You said Ray Stevens, Ray the Crippler Stevens. I was a big fan of him growing up. Now, Rocky, you don't know who this guy was. He was a greasy-looking little brawler with one glove on, and this guy would beat people merciless in the ring. But he didn't actually hurt them. He just made it look that good. He was the original Crippler before the fallen one, Chris Benoit. And this guy would have great matches. I mean, just great matches. Didn't he tag with Adrian Adonis for a while?
He did. Yeah. Well, he's the reason the Shawn Michaels, what we call the Flair and the Shawn Michaels bump, that was the Ray Stevens bump. Ray Stevens came up with the flippy bump on the turnbuckles. That was his original calling card.
Oh,
yes.
So
Stevens, what was he, 5'10", 200 pounds at most?
Yeah.
With a pot belly. But this guy would go into the ring, and he would make you believe that he was going to hurt somebody every son of a gun night that he was in there. He would just do it. I loved Ray Stevens. So when I first started watching wrestling in '84, some of the Coliseum stuff had come out. And I would, if I begged my dad and I was really good, I got to, rent some of that stuff. And I would see Stevens, and I would just like this guy is so good. He reminded me a lot of Blackjack Mulligan.
Yeah.
Similar. He was just a very small Blackjack Mulligan.
Right.
But man, his punishment, the way he would choreograph it, Rocky, in the ring.
Yeah.
Like he would twist your arm, punch you in the armpit, punch you in the teat, punch you in the neck, punch you in the throat. Like he built a story for what he was doing. I love Ray Stevens. So I'm sorry I did that. So Rock, what's your next your next forgotten storyline?
So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna stick in '97, and it's something that we never got an answer to. It's not necessarily a payoff, but this happened at the '99 King of the Ring, the Stone Cold ladder match versus Vince and Shane. Do you remember what happened at the end of the match?
I can say I do not. How about you, PJ?
So
I do not.
It was a ladder match. There was a briefcase in it. Somebody raised the briefcase so Austin couldn't get it, causing him the match. But we were never explained who raised the briefcase. There was no payoff to it.
Oh, wow.
And then like I said, no payoff, nothing. It just kept on going with the story, and nothing came of it. So it's not something that people really talk about. I don't think it's that popular, but like a storyline we didn't get because it wasn't actually between two wrestlers that we were expecting a payoff. It was just something that wasn't explained. So that was something that stuck out to me that I found in my research. And then going on, I know, Michael, this one, we both had this one on our list, and that was of the GTV. And on the very first instance that it showed, if you see on the actual, on the bottom right left corner, it actually said GDTV.
Yes.
Okay. Oh, so you already knew that. Oh, I was testing you. All right. Go ahead and tell us about it.
So GDTV was supposed to be Goldust TV, and it was supposed to be like reintroducing him to, like, do you remember? And I hate to say this, and it was a Vince Russo production. I know he's a friend of yours, PJ, but it was GDTV, Val Venus at a urinal next to the Big Show. Do you guys remember this scene?
Yeah.
Do you know where I'm going with this, PJ?
No, I don't, but go ahead.
So it's filmed in black and white, and he's next to the Big Show, and he looks over as they're urinating, and he says, "I thought they called you the Big Show," and then the Big Show took his head and slammed it into the wall. Then they had a match that night. Obviously a Russo production. But what it comes down to is that they changed it to GTV, and it was supposed to be Vic Grimes. So the original, and of course another Vince Russo, he was going to be Key as a kilo of cocaine. That's
Geez.
what he was supposed to tag with the Godfather as, I mean, he attacked the Godfather, and it was supposed to be like supply and demand or something like that. I don't write this. I just know it from history. Actually, Supply and Demand was supposed to be the Godfather and Val Venus, and that's how they were going to get together because they were going to go after Key at the same time.
Yeah.
But at the same point, So they did the GDTV, and then it became GTV. And then when Grimes got injured, they said there was no point for him to come back because all he could do was take insane bumps, and he wasn't that great in the ring. Now, can you testify to that and tell me how good he was in the ring?
I mean, I don't know very much. He was very, and look, in wrestling, it's kind of, it sucks that it has to be this way, but unfortunately, why not? Maybe not. Unfortunately, there's a reason everything is the way it is. You have to be well liked by the people that, there were always gatekeepers in wrestling, and I don't believe in gatekeepers in any industry, but in a way, it was there to protect what everybody had built, because you know what I mean. In wrestling, there has to be some kind of loyalty and some weird kind of alliances and allegiance, because it's a fake business, right? It's not real. It's not like you could, in order to hold your position, you just got to be really good and not be defeated. That doesn't work. You know what I mean? It's a work. It's really much more like a bastardized version of Hollywood. Really, we're writing scripts and we're acting it out in a physical manner, which I hate to say that about wrestling, but it's reality. So I think that part always has a part to play. But I think Vic Grimes just never really was I always made sure that I was friendly with everybody. You had to respect the boys, the talent, the promoters, the whole industry. You kind of had to pay your dues, and I understood that, and everybody liked me, so that's why for me it wasn't hard to get in. But a guy like Vic Grimes, he was just quiet. He shunned everything in that way, which, I mean, he didn't do anything necessarily wrong that would cause, and in reality, what did he really do? Nothing. Just quiet. Maybe people took that as being into himself and not wanting to, you know what I mean? Then jealousy takes over too. It's like, why is this guy getting you know what I mean, a break? I've been in the business for 20 years. You get that kind of stuff, which is not cool. So I think it's a lot of that, but he really was not well known or even liked in the locker room, which I think has a lot to do with the way he was perceived, which is unfair, but, to be quite honest, because he was a pretty good performer in the ring, as far as I could see.
Interesting.
Yeah. I got a little bit more to add before we move on. Because for me, when this came out in '97, I was 10 years old. So this was PG-14 TV. So this was big stuff for me. And I just want to give a little bit more clearer understanding about what GTTV is to some listeners who maybe weren't even born yet. So it was a storyline device that featured hidden camera footage revealing personal and often controversial moments involving the superstars. Like you mentioned, the one that we saw with Val Venis and Big Show. The two that I remember the most, because one was romantic and then the other one was comedy. Comedy one was Al Snow talking to Head backstage. Hidden camera in the locker room. He's just having conversations with Head. To me as a kid, that's funny. And then the one storyline that I actually think got the most progression out of this was the relationship between Stephanie McMahon and Tess. You got to see them backstage, kissing and stuff, back in the docks or wherever. So we got to see that kind of unfold, and that was something that we hadn't seen with some of that backstage stuff that was new to the Attitude Era. So that was very cool for me as a young kid.
Real quick, as a sidebar, did you ever meet Andrew Martin, PJ?
Oh yeah, I worked with him, unfortunately. Whew.
How bad?
Stiff as, oh boy, was he stiff. Everything hurt. Just looking at him hurt. Like he's such a nice dude, such a kind soul. I really liked him as a person, but boy, just everything. Just everything was pain. Like I don't understand how somebody could be that stiff. That's him. And he wasn't meaning to be stiff. Just didn't have I could make it look like I knocked your teeth out and you would barely feel my hand. You wouldn't know if you were hit. And where he was the opposite, like he punched you and you were like, what the hell just happened? Like, why? Why you hit me so hard?
Well, see, I've always tried to figure that one out because they always said that they said that Vince saw him the next Diesel. They saw the next Kevin Nash, but he's 4 inches shorter. Has absolutely and I'm not speaking ill of the dead. He had no charisma. He had jack point nothing for charisma.
No, he didn't. Unfortunately, he didn't. He was kind of, he was a good-looking dude, but he was kind of goofy. And I'm not saying that in a bad way. Just his personality. Like I'm goofy too. Like if I'm Pete, like in the locker room, I'm goofy. I portrayed a different character, and I kind of got over. Where Test, it was a little bit harder for him, because he was just, but he was a good dude. I feel bad for him, man. He was a lost soul. He dealt with a lot of issues with depression and stuff, and you always feel bad for somebody like that. But yeah, he definitely lacked in that department for sure.
Well, you got to realize that rolls into a lost storyline because he was supposed to be the boyfriend of Stephanie McMahon, but then all of a sudden an affair happens, and she's with Triple H. So, what do you guys think would have happened if Triple H never interjected himself, or he and China stayed together? I mean, PJ, you'd have more perspective on this than anybody else.
Yeah, I was too young.
I don't know, man. I just, when it came down to all of it, first of all, I saw the China thing was pretty obvious and out in the open for me. Just being around, seeing what I saw, sharing what we shared. I don't know, man. I just don't think Hunter at that point was just destined to take the reins. It was just like, for some reason, man, it was like written in stone. I think he just had that hyper focus in some weird way that this is going to be his company. I think he felt he was going to be working with Vince for a very long time, and he did. I just don't think anybody could have foreseen what was going to happen and what happened. And in some ways, was best for business, as famously they always say. Because in reality, it was best for business, and I think Hunter's doing actually a great job. Unfortunately, it just took a lot of family mess to kind of clear all that up, which is wild if you think about it. The way it all went down. But yeah, I mean, it is what it is.
Still unfolding.
Still unfold, and it's gonna unfold still for a long time. I still don't see Vince. I still can't see. I mean, it's all but written, but I still can't see Vince McMahon in some way not wanting to or trying to. I don't know. Isn't that weird? Like,
you know it better than we do, bro. You know it better than we do.
It's wild, dude. I mean, Vince, literally, he was, when we used to go backstage for TV tapings, before it was called Vince's office, there was photocopied sheets like all over the locker rooms, and Vince's office was called the Emperor's office. So he was literally the emperor of that ship. Like, he was the man. And now it's like he's, you know what I mean? It's just a couple of years. He's not even in the, I mean, obviously,
honestly, I don't think his faculties are all there at this point.
No, I don't think they were ever there. I think he lost his mind a long time ago. I mean, he's just a wild dude, man. I think he lost his stuff a long time ago. But yeah, I mean, it was bound to happen. I just wish it did. I kind of wish it didn't happen this way, because I think it also does a disservice to his legacy, because he did, he caused a lot of bad for a lot of people. I know that. But he also caused
done
a lot
some
of
bad things, though. We have to be honest with this. He's done some bad things.
Oh, he's done some horrible things. But, he also was I don't think wrestling would be what it is today if it wasn't for Vince. So you always
miss wrestling. I kind of miss wrestling from 1984, bro.
Yeah.
I miss my territories. I miss, Wild Bill Irwin. I miss Jake the Milkman Milligan. I miss these guys.
I know. And it was great times. It was great times. But, I mean, would we have WrestleMania be a 2-night event, in stadiums back to back, selling 150,000 tickets in a weekend? It's wild. I mean, you never know. But, at least it's in good hands. I mean, at least the WWE now is in good hands. It's just weird that it's not in the McMahon's hands. For the first time ever, pro wrestling is out of the hands of the old timey promoters. It's actually all now in television and real sports and you know what I mean. It's in corporate hands. It's just wild. I never would have thought that.
So, I'm going to throw one out here for you.
Sure.
This was a storyline that died really fast because he jumped ship out of WWF, and that was Ultimate Warrior versus The Undertaker.
Oh.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
You'll have to educate me on that one.
Undertaker put the Ultimate Warrior in the casket. He didn't want to put over Mark Calloway, which I don't know why you wouldn't want to put over the best big man ever. I mean, seriously, like it's an argument between he and Kane. There's no,
Oh, for sure.
And yeah, there's nobody else you could put in that argument.
But I don't think then they took him. They didn't take. I mean,
they didn't take him seriously.
No, yeah, Undertaker took a lot of years, even after the Attitude Era. It took years and years of that myth of Taker's still here, by the way. You know what I mean? It's like time kind of was his ally in that way, where he just put in the most time and had the most iconic character, and with that, the myth grew. You know what I mean? And almost like it made itself into its own existence. Like, you know what I mean? It's like it wasn't even written. Like the streak wasn't written. It just kind of happened. You know what I mean? By accident. Like
Absolutely.
The building of the Undertaker really happened by accident. He was like, look, he's a top guy, so maybe like he goes into WrestleMania and he just kind of wins every time because who's going to beat the Undertaker? But we really don't have anything crazy for the Undertaker as far as plans. So you know what I mean? It just kind of kept silently building, which is great to his benefit. And then all of a sudden you look back and it's like, oh, he's 20-0. Really? Okay. You know what I mean? And it just kind of became something that I don't think anybody could have planned, which is great. That's the part of wrestling that is magic. Is those like little
WrestleMagic.
things. Exactly. You know what I mean? Seriously though. It's like those little things that you could find in some basic storytelling that just happens, that you're not really planning for. You know, it's cool stuff.
The best match that Undertaker never had, Scott Hall at WrestleMania.
Yeah.
That would have been the best match he ever had. Not ever had, but I think they would have put on a clinic.
Yeah, for sure. Scott was. See, that's the thing is, Scott was big, but he always tried to work like he was a smaller guy. You know what I mean? I don't think people give Scott. I mean, Scott was a big dude. You know, he's a very big dude. And
6'7", 270.
That's a big guy, right? People don't, you say it and it's like, yeah, but Taker's bigger or this guy's bigger. It's like, yeah, but dude, guys like Scott Hall you don't see every day either. You don't go to the Waffle House and see Scott Hall, jacked up like 270 to 6'7". You don't see that.
I did tell you how I prank called him though, so that was pretty awesome. Him and Sid Vicious, which was pretty awesome stuff.
That's hilarious.
Oh, dude, I loved that. And the way Sid was huffing and puffing, I loved it. Sorry, Sid Udy, if you're out there listening to my story.
Sid's the best.
Yeah. He's a good guy, but
he's Sid.
But this is one thing I'll give about Sid, is that when I was down in Memphis, living there for a long time, a lot of the people who were like his son's age said that like he was really good about giving back to the community and giving back to people. So for you, Sid, good job.
Yeah, no, he was. He was always good like that. Sid's a very good guy. That's one thing. As a human being, he was a very nice man and a very kind and giving man. He wasn't a jerk, so a lot of people in his position were. He was not. He was a nice man.
We're talking about the same Sid with the hairline temper.
Yes, absolutely.
All right.
He was a good dude. At least the guy I knew was a good dude.
He was good to you, but you're also 150 pounds stronger than me, so I only weigh 145. So.
Stop it.
Now let's get into some brass tacks and baseball bats. Okay, guys, what are goofy storylines you saw really disappear? Because we've been talking about this. I talked about Chucky and Rick Steiner. That went nowhere, and that served no absolute purpose whatsoever. And they did the whole thing to promote the new Child's Play movie. But the fact is, Rick Steiner, why did you pick Rick Steiner? It made no sense, and it went nowhere. That's kind of goofy. And I honestly, what was that goofball's name that parodied Jim Ross?
Oh,
Ferrara.
Ed Ferrara.
Yeah, that guy needs to have his face burned on a grill somewhere for what
Yeah,
he did.
I don't like that dude.
You want to say why?
I never liked that he did that.
Yeah, say why.
Cleanse
your palate, PJ. Cleanse your
What
palate.
happened? What do you mean?
Say why you don't like him.
No, I did. I didn't like the fact that he just was mean to Jr. Like, I didn't like the fact that he was just like attacking Jr. Because to me, like, Jr. is like all about, he's wrestling. If you don't like Jim Ross, it's like you don't like pro wrestling. And it just kind of was like, I don't know. I mean, it was a WWE ploy. I get it, but I just, don't mess with Jr. Kind of take it personally.
I feel like very 100% in agreement with that. Do you believe that, like, he points the finger at Russo and Russo points the finger at him? Who do you believe was really behind it? Vince?
I don't know. I just think it's one of those things, dude. I honestly believe this. It's just it all got carried out. It was all out of control. Like, even all the click stuff, all the stuff that was happening backstage that we all pontificate nowadays and discuss and all this stuff. A lot of it was just like adults acting like children, like just ribs and being dicks to one another. Excuse my language. Just not being good humans. A lot of that happened in wrestling, and there was no reason for it. Just guys were jerks. And it was like that. If you were a bully in those days. If you were a big star, you could bully other people, and a lot of bullying happened in the business back in the day, and that's really what happened. And it's unfortunate, and a lot of people couldn't even understand it today. It's like, how could that happen? If I told you some of the real stuff that ever happened to me, people would be like, why didn't you just like file a lawsuit with WWE? Why did many people file lawsuits? Like, there was so much cruel stuff going on, hazing wise and stuff in the early in the mid 90s. It's just something that wouldn't be tolerated today, like, not even close. But back then it was just like the way it was for everybody. You know what I mean? So it's like, what do you do? What do you say? You don't say anything. You just kind of go with it, right? And I think that's a lot of what that is, for real.
That's like, this whole conversation reminds me of an interview I saw with Rob Van Dam when he was talking about CM Punk. And he said, like, yeah, CM Punk is going to start CM Punk came to him. He's like, yeah, we're going to do like locker room meeting. And he's like, who the hell's CM Punk? Well, who the hell's Rob Van Dam, really? Rob Van Dam never struck me as anybody besides a person who was given a title because of his skill set, which should have been Sabu's title over and over again. And he had the charisma of a stoner. Great. You're a stoner. I never saw in Rob Van Dam what everybody else saw. He had a little bit of something, but like when he talks trash about CM Punk, it's like he's had way more longevity not wrestling than you did longevity wrestling.
Right. Yeah, I mean, that's definitely a thing, and I could see both. Both ideals. I could see why Punk would say what he says, and I could see why Rob would say what he says about Punk. Because I could take both. I could take both sides and I can probably convince you I'm right on either one. Because it's like nobody's really wrong. It's just kind of like a preference,
Fair enough.
And I guess, but I guess guys like Rob, I identify with guys like Rob more because we were there for all of it. Like, I just feel like those extra 5 or 6 years that you have with a guy like CM Punk, where you literally started ECW, and Rob was ECW for a very long time. That's the truth. You can't deny that. You can't deny that he was a special generational talent that very few people will ever attain.
Who was the last man to pin him before he went undefeated?
Yeah.
No. Who was the last man to pin him?
I don't know. I have no idea.
Chris Jericho.
Really?
Yeah.
Well,
keep going.
No, But anyways, yeah. I mean, it is what it is, man. It is what it is.
So I think you already mentioned some other goofy things that, or maybe they may fall under goofy, but that was the birth of the hand from Mae Young, the Katie Vick storyline. You have things that the Vince McMahon Kiss My Ass Club. That one was kind of goofy.
Terrible.
Yeah, terrible. But one that when I first saw it, I was like, I don't know how they're gonna pull this off. But due to real life events, this storyline was canceled, and that was the one in 2007, the death of Mr. McMahon. So this one was, like I said, this one was canceled because this one ran in June. Mr. McMahon appeared to be starting to lose his mind a little bit, lose his marbles, and he was wandering around Raw. And at the end of the show, he steps into a limousine and it explodes.
What was it? Brian Kendrick smiled at him and got fired?
Well, I guess we might not ever know that one, but this storyline was actually canceled because of the real life events of the tragedy of the Chris Benoit family. So this one never got to see through. There was a lot of media pushback on this one and mixed reactions, and because of what was going on, they just had to sweep it under the rug. So, but a death angle on TV for the boss, I don't know how they would have got around that one. So that one was just, like I said, that's going to be a lost one on us forever.
All right, PJ, I'm gonna hit you with this one because I'm gonna say that like Vince McMahon believed he could come back and everybody would forget because he could create TV and create reality as far as his wrestling company went. How do you feel about that?
It's just always been the way for Vince. I think he again I think Vince is a strange, weird, once in a lifetime kind of character in this world. And you're not going to have. There's a reason why there's not a lot of Vince McMahons. Because it's just he's a wild dude. You know what I mean? He's a wild man. He's a wild person. He's done some crazy things, and a lot of those crazy things worked for him. And as he got older, things kind of started to come back on him. Like, he did for a long time have. I mean, the WWE. I mean, when you go into a WWE building, I must say, it feels like a fortress when you go in the locker room. If you don't belong there, and you definitely know when you're there that it's Vince McMahon's. Just like, again, the way they have the signs pointing to the Emperor, meaning Vince's office. That was what it was. You're in his kingdom, and we all were just like begging or happy to be there in any capacity. It really was like, if you were there, dude, you felt like, because again, you're making money. Everybody's getting hundreds of dollars a day just to work, and do sometimes nothing at television. People are, it was just you'd spend $150,000-$200,000 just on extras and food and catering for the boys at TV, and that's a lot, and that's what unfortunately, it paid for a whole industry underneath itself, and I don't think a lot of people realize that as well. But anyways, Vince is just a wild person, and I don't think anybody will ever be like Vince again, for good and for bad, and for good. I don't think there'll be another guy like that.
That's very interesting information to have. I mean, like, I look at like JCP. I mean, I know you watched a lot of JCP when you're growing up. Rockies before your time, and I watched a lot of Bill Watts, Mid-South. To me, that was wrestling. And so when I saw the like cartoonish and everything and the way he took over, I mean, I was 9-10 years old, but I still like grasped onto what I wanted as wrestling as opposed to sports entertainment.
Right. Yeah.
It was a hard time. It was a hard time for, a 9-year-old wrestling historian.
Uh-huh.
But we're going to move forward. Okay. So.
Hit me.
All right. Go for it, brother. Go for it.
So let's talk about one. I'm going to move into the 2010s here. I'm going to pick one out. This one involves a real life celebrity. This one involves Daniel Bryan. This storyline involving Daniel Bryan and Charlie Sheen in WWE took place in 2012 and was part of the build-up to the 1000th episode of Raw. Charlie Sheen was a social media ambassador. To celebrate the 1000th episode of Raw, he was brought in as a special social media ambassador, and he was there on commentary and interacted with fans through social media and during the broadcast. During the broadcast, not the podcast. At one point, it was teased that these two would face off at SummerSlam 2012. However, the match never materialized. This one kind of fizzled out. I've heard rumors about Charlie's health, and then about him taking bumps. So this one, it was something. It was just a publicity stunt aimed at leveraging his mainstream appeal to draw some attention to WWE programming, which is what they always do with a celebrity. We see it year in and year out. Any one of you have any feelings or even recall this? It was short-lived.
Oh, didn't he have the HIV? Wasn't that the beginning of him finding out he was HIV positive?
It might have been. I didn't do the research into his actual health problems. I just heard he was having some, so that was part of.
Yes, I would say that. Say that.
I bet money on that too.
PJ, I've got one for you.
Sure.
Jenna Jameson.
Yes.
Don't just say yes like that.
What?
So she was on a couple of pay-per-views with you, and then she disappeared. Then she was all of a sudden showing up on Raw with Val Venus, which he's no you. But the point is, how was it to work with her, and how was it so weird that you guys kind of I can get away with this saying bitch at each other, and then nothing happened.
Yeah, it was just it was just a couple of skits. To me, it was never even an afterthought, really. It was just kind of something we shot, and nothing really came of it, Paulie was always trying to kind of, get as much stuff in the can as far as footage and interview, and try to just parlay it into anything he could for some publicity. So if he had anybody with some buzz, he would always kind of try to pull that stuff. You know what I mean? But no, nothing was ever. There was no real intention of moving forward with her in any way.
So that's a dropped one. But how was she backstage? Was she nice?
Oh, she was cool. She was super cool. She was a nice person. Kind of quiet. Stayed to herself. Really didn't bother. You know what I mean? A lot of people, I think, are more like that. They're just, very laid back and, quiet and unassuming. To be honest, most of them.
All right, so I'm gonna drop another one on you guys. So the first ECW pay-per-view, Big Dick Dudley comes out of nowhere, and Joey Styles yells, "It's Big Dick Dudley," and he's out of jail. Now, Big Dick is not with us anymore, and I remember what Stevie Richards said. He's like, "I got posters of him all over my room. It's no secret. Stevie Richards loves Big Dick." He can deliver a promo like no one else. But the point is, it went nowhere also. And it was Big Dick Dudley was the enforcer because Brian Lee wasn't there anymore. Now, this is way before your time, but can you say anything about that storyline or anything about when you came in and you met the Dudley boys or anything like that?
There was really not much to it. It was so weird. Big Dick was just kind of like a Jersey guy who was just he was a big dude, and I think he could get drugs and shit. He was he had the
language.
He was just a connected guy, and he came to the shows. He was a wrestling fan, and they're like, hey, let's bring him in for a spot. You know what I mean? And then more and more he started to train, and that's kind of how it went. A lot of that happened in ECW, believe it or not.
He had calves the size of trees.
Oh, he was a big dude, man.
I thought he was a power lifter. I thought he and 911 were the same person for a while.
They look like the same person. They could be. That's half of Philadelphia, though. Yeah, so there you go.
All right. So To wrap this episode up, let's do some speed questions. Are you ready?
Nope.
PJ, that means you.
Yeah. All right.
All right. We want to do a show with Raven in the future. Are you in?
Me?
Yeah.
I would love to.
Okay. Next question. Best choke slam in the business.
Oh, that's a good one.
Current or all time?
All time.
That'd be all time, yeah. Undertaker.
Better than Kane?
I was going to say
Undertaker.
Kane.
Yeah, Undertaker, definitely.
Okay.
Currently, it would be Damian Priest, but all time Kane.
Okay.
I'm going Kane. I go Kane.
Okay.
I got a soft spot in my heart for Kane because he and Undertaker are really truly the same person. They really are. Okay, best powerbomb.
Ooh. You know what? I liked Sid's.
Sid, the jackknife, and Batista bomb.
Ooh.
Dude,
I took all of those, so yeah.
Big Van
Batista
Vader.
bomb was actually very easy to take.
Are you serious?
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, I love taking it. Dave loved it because I used to sit way up with it, so I'd give Dave like all day to like kind of sit down with it. We loved work. I loved working with him. I was like one of his first matches in WWE. Dave and I had great chemistry. Huh?
I said no Shizer. You know that's great, man.
Yeah, he was a great dude. I loved working with him. He was actually I could see it from there that he was going to be something. He was like just so charismatic, so good, and super cool dude too. So yeah, I always loved Dave.
So since it's being more adopted nowadays, it seems best spear.
Yeah, for sure.
Who has the best? Yeah, who has the best spear? Because
Braun Breaker.
Braun Breaker wears the shirt. It says best spear in the business, so he's putting it out there. But
yeah, but I even though I'm not like that familiar with it, just from what I've seen, obviously it's the same thing with anything. They're going to publicize it, and you're going to have a certain opinion about it if they're pushing it. But if you look at Goldberg, obviously had a great one. But for now, I would say Braun Breaker, just because it's hot.
All right. Person you never worked with that you wish you would have worked with. And you can't say Ray the Crippler Stevens.
No, I would say Ricky the Dragon Steamboat.
Great answer.
I would love to play Flair in a match with Ricky Steamboat because I could pretty much do that anyways. I mean, not like that.
Do it Justin Incredible or do you use PJ Polacco?
Huh?
Could you do it just Incredible or could you do it as PJ Polacco?
It had to be just Incredible. PJ Polacco couldn't do anything to Ricky Steamboat. I'd be two in my head. I'd have to be just Incredible.
How do you cane Ricky Steamboat?
Easy. Just
We need to have Vic. We need to have Vic Steamboat come out and try to help, and that's who you cane first. Okay.
That was horrible.
No, it's true. I mean, Vic Steamboat was never Rick Steamboat, but that'd be fun just to see. I mean, even at this age, you could make that work.
Probably, yeah.
Okay.
I got some honorable mentions. Oh, you're still going?
Go ahead. No, go ahead. Go ahead, bro.
Honorable mentions, and you ask your last questions. Cool?
Sure.
All right. Yeah. Honorable mention storylines for things that were unsolved, just forgotten about, no payoff, anything. And this is, like I said, there's a laundry list, but things I picked out. The 2006 Kane versus Kane angle with the imposter Kane being Luke Gallows. No payoff to that one. You had the Nexus Barry the Undertaker angle with the Buried Alive match against Kane for the world title. Nexus came out and helped Kane bury Undertaker with no rhyme or reason to that. No payoff. Dolph vacating the U.S. title, leaves the company, comes back, and
that was dumb as hell.
Doesn't pursue it. Yeah, that was dumb. And then one thing that, due to injury, that didn't play out that I would want your opinion on, and that was something that I would have liked to see play out, and that was the new NWO with Kevin Nash, HBK, and Taker. that we saw they were trying to recruit Triple H, but never happened because of the Nash injury.
Yeah. That would have been great. I mean, any kind of version with those kinds of names would have been interesting. I'd like to see how that would have played out. Um, it's just a shame how unfortunately how quickly things were dropped as well. Like just as much like as you could get a successful angle or something that pops on television, you also like can blow something that could equally have been as big, in 2 seconds. Like there was just so much, you know what I mean? Like things just went so fast in those days. Like if it didn't work in 1 week, you'd shut it down, which is a shame, because there was a lot of great stuff out there. But yeah, that would have definitely been one of them for sure.
And I think one of the more confusing storylines that we had in recent memory, and that was during COVID, and that was the Burnt Fiend storyline. I guess everybody was sick and didn't know what to do, and just that one just was out there, and I don't know how they were ever going to play that one off. But anyways, I'm sorry for cutting you off, Gardner. Go ahead and continue your question.
No, actually, Justin, I want to ask you something. What was your interaction with Chris Canyon?
Nothing really, special. He was a good dude. We had mutual friends, but I never recall really having much of a relationship. Just good dude. But I didn't really know him that well.
A lot of people believe, well, he believed to his death that he wouldn't get signed or re-signed or anything because he was homosexual. Which, I mean, let's be honest, we've all heard the stories like gents love to watch.
Yeah, I listen. I'm not trying to imitate or pretend that I know what he was going through. I do know that it was probably maybe his perception, because there were some bullies in the locker room, and people like Bradshaw were definitely amongst those. But it was just, you could say it was just people ribbing, and I think Chris, wasn't really built for that stuff. I think he had unfortunately, a very complicated life, and I was ribbed hard too, and he was ribbed hard, and it's not for everybody, and a lot of people can take that into a very negative place, and I don't know if that was the case with Chris, but he was, from what I hear, he was a great guy. But I don't think him being gay had anything to do with it. I mean, Pat Patterson was openly gay, and he was amongst one of the favorites in the locker room forever. You know what I mean? A lot of
I
people,
get it.
I mean?
It's one of those things that that I'm gonna ask. So
and maybe it's me being naive, right? Maybe it's me being naive. I don't know. Perhaps again, I was a bit removed from that, but I just But again, I'm not him. I'm not feeling what he. You know what I mean? Only he could feel that. And I'm sure a lot of times there were negativities. I'm just not sure. I just don't think the WWE locker room was kind of, I don't know.
that's open.
It could be. It
that
could be.
point.
Listen, the WWE locker room could be a rough place if you're George Clooney. It doesn't matter who you are, and what I mean by that is you can be perfect, you can be a stud, you can be anybody. They're just gonna fuck with you no matter what. It's kind of what it is. You know what I mean? And I think that's one of the realities that people don't. Unfortunately, I don't think a lot of people can handle that.
At least you're giving us a candid opinion of real life.
I mean, it's just. I mean, it's sad, but it's true. I mean, it was a bully mentality there for a long time. And I don't think anybody would argue with that. But what are you going to do, right? If you say something, it's on you. You're the bad guy for noticing. So if I felt like I was getting abused or shit on, I would just say something, and it'd be like, "It's your fault. What are you? You're the one that's." You know what I mean? So you just learn to shut up. What it was.
I appreciate your honesty.
Yep, always do. All right, fellas. Well, we're closing in. Let's go ahead and wrap up. Tell people where to reach us, and we may have to be pushing another part for this one because, like I said, we really scratched the surface. I mean, we really just picked out a few from each decade, and we didn't even really touch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we can definitely go further.
So yeah, I'm gonna make my notes but anyways, Rocky T007 on Twitter. Uh, Gardner, I know we play phone tag a lot. It's just life is growing and so much more is on our plates, and your life is growing and your love is growing and mine is here with our women. Yeah. But it's more with work and school. It's just piling on. But I'm still grateful for the times that we are able to get together, and even if it's last minute stuff, but we do a pretty quick turnaround whenever we have a topic that we can really sink our teeth into. So if anybody's listening, something you want to talk about, just reach out and we'll bring it to fruition. I'm out.
I'm at 144 Captain. That is my handle on X, Twitter, whatever the else. And PJ, you want to put your stuff out there?
Yeah, just hit me up on X and on Instagram. Both are at PJ Palago, and that's all.
Thank you for taking care of stuff. Thank you for taking care of Mav. And ladies and gentlemen, WrestleMagic brings wrestling magically to you because that's what we do, man. And we want to care. We just want to have fun with wrestling.
That's it.
All right. Good night, gentlemen.
All right, guys. Thank you. It was a pleasure, and I'll see you guys very soon. God bless.
All right. Later, fellas.
Absolutely.
Later, guys.
Thanks for listening to the WWE Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe on your favorite podcast app so you don't miss a show, or head to WWEpodcast.com. And for all of these shows ad-free, head over to patreon.com/WWE Podcast. Until then, we'll see you next time.